The cottage sat quietly at the edge of the moor, where the land softened into long grass and the sky always seemed a little wider. A narrow path led to its door, worn smooth by years of unhurried footsteps, though few people could say who had first walked it. Each evening, as dusk settled and the air cooled, a warm glow appeared in the cottage windows. The fire was already lit. It always was. No one in the nearby village remembered a time when the hearth inside that cottage had gone cold. In summer, when the days were long and the nights gentle, the fire burned low and calm. In winter, when frost silvered the fields and the wind pressed close, it glowed steadily, never flaring, never fading. Inside, the fire rested within a wide stone hearth, its embers breathing softly. The room around it was simple: wooden chairs, a small table, shelves holding nothing in excess. Everything had its place, and nothing felt hurried. The fire did not crackle loudly. It did not demand attention. It offered warmth the way the night offered stars, quietly, patiently, without asking anything in return. Those who passed the cottage in the evening often slowed their steps. Even from a distance, the warmth seemed to reach them, easing shoulders, softening thoughts. Some paused at the gate for a moment, resting their hands on the wood, breathing more deeply without quite knowing why. The fire did that. It remembered evenings. It remembered people sitting close after long days, hands open toward the heat, words spoken slowly or not at all. It remembered silence that felt full rather than empty. It remembered nights when nothing needed fixing. When the wind rose, the fire steadied itself. When rain fell, it glowed a little brighter, not in defiance, but in reassurance. The cottage settled around it, walls warm, shadows calm and familiar. Sometimes, late at night, when the world outside was completely still, the fire would shift softly, embers settling into a deeper glow. It was not a sound to wake anyone, only enough to remind the night that warmth remained. Seasons passed. Snow gathered along the roof and melted again. Leaves drifted across the path and were carried away by the wind. The moon waxed and waned above the moor. The fire did not change. Those who slept nearby rested more easily, as though the knowledge of that steady flame carried into the dreams. Even those far away sometimes dreamed of a quiet room, a stone hearth, a warmth that never faded. The cottage did not call anyone to it. It waited, and each evening, as dusk returned and the sky dimmed gently, the windows glowed once more, steady, calm, unending. Somewhere on the moor, a fire was still burning. Somewhere, warmth remained, and the night, comforted by this simple truth, carried on softly into rest. As the night deepened, the cottage seemed to breathe more slowly. Outside, the moor darkened into soft layers of shadow. The wind lowered its voice, and the last bird settled into stillness. Inside, the fire held its steady glow, illuminating the room in gentle amber light. Nothing moved quickly here. The chairs stood where they had always stood, angled slightly toward the hearth, as though they expected someone to return at any moment. The table caught the light along its edges, revealing marks left by years of quiet use, cups set down carefully, hands resting without hurry. The fire noticed these things. It noticed how the room felt fuller at night, even when no one was there. How silence gathered not as emptiness, but as comfort. The kind of silence that allows thoughts to loosen and drift away on their own. The flames shifted slightly, settling deeper into the hearth. Embers glowed like small, patient stars. The warmth spread evenly through the stone floor and into the walls, where it stayed, held gently and without effort. The cottage listened. It listened to the distant sigh of the wind across the grass. To the slow creak of wood as the building settled further into rest. To the quiet rhythm of the fire itself, steady and unbroken. Somewhere beyond the fields, a traveler paused without knowing why. Somewhere nearby, someone turned in their sleep and found themselves resting more deeply. The fire did not reach for them. It simply was. Long ago, the fire had learned that not all warmth needed to be felt directly. Some warmth worked best from a distance, known rather than seen, trusted rather than questioned. The night pressed closer to the windows, curious but unthreatening. The glass reflected the firelight softly, doubling the glow and sending it back into the room. Time felt different here. Minutes did not count themselves. Hours drifted together like smoke rising slowly into the darkened rafters. The fire did not mark the passing of the night, it released it. As the deepest hour approached, the flames grew quieter still. Not dimmer, just calmer. The embers settled into a low, constant warmth that asked nothing of the night except to be allowed to continue. The cottage held steady on the moor, its light unchanged. And somewhere between waking and sleep, the world remembered that warmth did not need to be earned, and rest did not need to be rushed. The fire remained, the night listened, and everything that needed to slow down did. The fire had been burning for a very long time, not in the way flames usually measure time, by hours or days, but in the way the land measures it, quietly and without urgency. The hearthstones held that knowledge. They remembered warmth layered upon warmth, evening folded into evening. The fire remembered people, not faces or names, but presence. The way someone would settle into a chair after a long walk. The sound of boots set carefully by the door, hands held open toward the heat, fingers slowly loosening. It remembered laughter that rose once and faded gently. It remembered long silences that needed no filling. It remembered nights when someone slept near the hearth, trusting the fire to keep watch. The cottage carried these memories softly. The fire never clung to them. It simply held them for a while, then let them rest into the stones, where they became part of the warmth itself. Outside, the moor lay quiet beneath a sky scattered with stars. The grass did not move. The air felt deep and settled, as though the night had found its most comfortable shape. Inside, the fire glowed low and steady. It did not flicker or shift unless it needed to. Its embers breathed slowly, sending out waves of heat that felt constant and familiar. This was the hour when dreams grew clearer. Those sleeping nearby found themselves drifting through calm places, rooms lit softly, paths known without effort, evenings that stretched kindly. Even those far away sometimes dreamed of a hearth they had never seen, yet somehow recognized. The fire did not mind. It had always known that warmth travels in ways that cannot be measured. As the night wore on, the cottage settled further into stillness. The beams overhead creaked once, then grew quiet. Shadows rested where they fell, unmoving. The fire remained awake, not alert, not watchful, simply present. It did not fear the night, nor the passing of time. It trusted both. It understood that darkness did not mean absence, and silence did not mean emptiness. And so it continued to burn, low, calm, unending, holding the quiet together until morning would one day arrive. The fire remembered, the cottage rested, and the night, reassured, drifted gently on. The longest night came without warning. The day had faded early, the light slipping away beneath thick cloud, and by evening the moor lay quiet beneath a pale cover of snow. The path to the cottage softened and disappeared, hedgerows bending under the weight of white stillness. Inside, the fire burned as it always had. The wind moved across the moor in low, patient breaths, pressing gently against the cottage walls. Snow gathered along the roof and windowsills, muffling every sound until the world felt wrapped and distant. The fire noticed the cold, but it did not react to it. It did not burn brighter or louder. It did not struggle. It simply continued, steady, calm, unchanged, sending warmth outward into stone and wood, into air and shadow. The cottage held that warmth carefully. Hours passed without marking themselves. The night deepened, but never felt heavy. Outside, the snow fell quietly, each flake finding its place and resting there. Inside, the embers glowed like a low constellation, familiar and reassuring. This was the kind of night that once would have worried people. A night when roads vanished and distances felt longer. But the fire remembered nights like this from long ago, when travelers found shelter, when warmth meant safety, when stillness was not feared. The fire held those memories close, letting them settle into the room. Somewhere beyond the moor, someone turned in their sleep and felt warmer without knowing why. Somewhere nearer, an animal rested more deeply, curled and untroubled. The night passed, not quickly, not slowly, just as it needed to. And when the deepest hour finally slipped away, the fire was still there, unchanged, unburdened, unbroken. The snow would melt, the path would return, morning would arrive in its own time. The fire did not need to prepare. It had already endured the longest night, simply by continuing to be what it was. The cottage stood quiet and warm against the cold. The fire remained, and the night, having said all it needed to say, drifted gently toward dawn. Morning came quietly to the moor. It did not announce itself with color or sound. Instead, the darkness softened, thinning gently at the edges, until the sky turned pale and open. Mist rested low over the fields, and the snow from the night before began to lose its sharpness. The cottage stood unchanged. Inside, the fire still burned. Its flames were low now, embers glowing steadily within the hearth. The warmth had settled deep into the stones and floor, where it would remain long after the fire itself might someday fade. But it had not faded yet. The fire never hurried the morning. It allowed the night to leave at its own pace. As light filtered through the windows, the fire simply adjusted, its glow blending naturally with the soft grey of dawn. Outside, the path slowly revealed itself again, pressed gently into the grass beneath melting frost. Birds began their morning calls, one at a time, unhurried, as though careful not to disturb the quiet that lingered. The cottage listened. It listened to the small sounds of waking, the shift of air, the settling of snow, the distant life returning to the land. The fire responded by holding steady, offering warmth without brightness, presence without demand. Those who woke nearby carried something with them into the day. A calm that lingered, a sense of having rested deeply, a quiet confidence that warmth existed somewhere, even when unseen. The cottage did not ask to be remembered. It would simply be there again at dusk, windows glowing, fire waiting, ready to hold the night gently once more. The morning unfolded, the moor breathed, the fire remained, and the world moved on, lighter for having known it. Evening came back to the moor the way it always did, slowly, without ceremony. The light softened first, edges blurred, colors deepened. The fields let go of the day with a quiet ease, and the path leading up the hill darkened into a familiar ribbon of shadow. The cottage waited. It did not prepare for evening. It did not need to. By the time the sky turned lavender and grey, the windows were already glowing. Inside, the fire welcomed the dusk as an old friend. It had spent the day resting low, embers steady, warmth held deep within stone and wood. Now, as the air cooled, the flames lifted just enough to meet the coming night, never brighter than needed, never less. The cottage settled around that warmth. Shadows returned to their places along the walls. The chairs angled themselves toward the hearth once more. The room felt fuller again, though no one had entered. Outside, the moor listened. Wind moved lightly through grass and hedge, carrying the scent of earth cooling after daylight. Somewhere, an owl called, once, then not again. The world was finding its quieter voice. The fire did not rush to fill the silence. It allowed it to arrive. This was the hour the fire knew best, the in-between, when the day had finished asking things, and the night had not yet begun to hold dreams. The fire had always belonged here, in this pause. It remembered evenings layered upon evenings, each one slightly different, yet all alike in their gentleness. It remembered how the glow in the window had once guided tired feet home, and how now it guided something softer, rest, perhaps, or reassurance. Far from the cottage, someone felt the day finally leave their shoulders. Somewhere else, a thought that had been circling all afternoon drifted away. The fire did not claim credit. It simply continued. The sky darkened fully now, stars settling into place above the moor. The cottage stood warm and small beneath them, unchanged, untroubled. Another night had arrived, and the fire, steady and unending, was ready to hold it, just as it always had, and always would. The night settled fully now, without sound or signal. It arrived the way rest arrives, gradually, gently, until suddenly it was everywhere. The moor lay dark and smooth beneath the stars, its shape softened into calm familiarity. The path no longer asked to be followed. The fields no longer waited for footsteps. Inside the cottage, the fire burned low. Not dimmer, just quieter. Its flames had eased into embers, glowing steadily within the hearth, releasing warmth in slow, even breaths. The room felt held, as though the walls themselves were listening. This was the hour when nothing needed to be done. The chairs stood empty but ready. The table rested without purpose. Shadows leaned into corners and stayed there, untroubled. The firelight moved only slightly, a gentle shimmer across stone and wood. The cottage did not expect anyone. It had learned that presence did not always mean company. Outside, the wind had stopped entirely. The night air felt deep and still, as though the world had paused between breaths. Even the stars seemed quieter, their light resting softly rather than shining. The fire remained. It did not guard. It did not watch. It simply continued. In places far from the cottage, people slept more deeply than they had in days. Their dreams were simple, paths without turns, rooms without noise, warmth without source. They did not know why. They did not need to. The fire had always understood that its work was subtle. That comfort did not announce itself. That rest arrived most easily when invited quietly. As the night grew older, time loosened further. Minutes thinned. Hours softened. The fire did not mark them. It let them pass unnoticed. The cottage rested on the moor, unchanged and unchanging. The fire held the quiet together, ember by ember, moment by moment. And the night, finding nothing it needed to disturb, stayed calm, deep, gentle, and whole. The night had grown very old. It was not tired, only thin, like a veil that had been gently worn smooth by hours of stillness. The stars above the moor remained, but their light felt softer now, less insistent, as though they too were preparing to rest. The cottage did not notice the change at first. Inside, the fire continued exactly as it had all night. The embers glowed low and steady, neither brightening nor fading, holding warmth in the same patient way they always had. The hearthstones were warm to the touch, carrying the memory of the fire deep within them. This was the hour just before anything happened. Not dawn yet, not night anymore, a quiet space in between. Outside, the air shifted slightly, not into movement, but into readiness. The moor felt open and expectant, though nothing stirred. Grass lay still, trees held their shapes without sound. Even the sky seemed to pause. The fire understood this moment well. It did not respond to it. It did not change. It simply stayed present, allowing the quiet to deepen around it. The cottage followed its lead, resting fully in the stillness. Somewhere, very far away, a sleeper drifted closer to waking, but not enough to rise. Their breathing slowed again, comforted by something they could not name. The fire did not reach outward. It never needed to. The quiet, having found a place where it could remain undisturbed, settled more deeply into itself. It learned the shape of the room, the curve of the hearth, the warmth held in stone and wood. This was not a silence waiting to be broken. It was a silence that belonged. The cottage stood unchanged beneath the thinning stars. The fire remained low and constant, holding the quiet together as gently as it had held the night. And for a little while longer, before morning would begin to remember itself, everything stayed exactly as it was, warm, still, and untroubled. The sky began to change almost imperceptibly. Not brighter, just lighter. A soft thinning at the edges of darkness, as though the night were gently loosening its hold rather than ending. The stars faded without hurry, slipping away one by one. The cottage noticed. Inside, the fire remained steady, its embers glowing quietly in the hearth. The warmth had settled so deeply into the room that it no longer felt like something coming from the fire at all, it simply felt like part of the cottage itself. The night had done its work. Outside, mist lay low across the moor, gathering in hollows and softening every line. The path was still hidden, but no longer lost. The land felt awake in a quiet way, as though it were listening for the right moment to begin again. The fire did not prepare for morning. It never had. It trusted the rhythm of things, the slow turning of hours, the gentle exchange between dark and light. The embers shifted once, settling deeper, their glow unchanged. Somewhere nearby, a bird stirred, not yet calling. Somewhere farther away, someone sleeping turned slightly, drifting toward waking but not reaching it. The cottage held the pause. This moment belonged to neither night nor day. It was a space of release, where nothing needed to be carried forward. The quiet remained, but it had softened, becoming lighter, easier to move within. The fire understood that this was how the night left, not by stopping, but by thinning into something gentler. The cottage stood ready, though it did not move. And as the first true hint of dawn touched the edge of the sky, the fire continued to burn, uncharken, unending, holding warmth not just for the night that had passed, but for the day that was slowly, kindly, on its way. Morning arrived at last, not as an interruption, but as a continuation. Light moved slowly across the moor, settling into grass and stone, lifting the mist without hurry. The path reappeared, familiar and gentle, as though it had never truly been gone. Birds found their voices one by one, careful not to disturb the calm that still lingered. The cottage stood unchanged. Inside, the fire still burned. Its flames were low now, almost indistinguishable from the glow held in the hearthstones. Warmth had seeped into every surface, into the floor, the walls, the air itself, until it no longer felt like something separate. It felt like home. The fire did not mark this moment as an ending. It had learned long ago that nothing truly ended here. Nights folded into mornings. Evenings returned. The cycle continued, smooth and unbroken. Those who woke nearby carried something with them into the day. A sense of ease. A memory of warmth without a clear source. The feeling that rest had been deep and untroubled. They moved slowly, naturally, as though the day itself had agreed to be gentle. The cottage did not call out. It never had. It did not need to be visited to be known. Its presence lingered quietly in the world, steady, reassuring, unchanged. And as the sun climbed higher and the moor returned fully to daylight, the fire remained, just as it always had. Somewhere, a hearth still burned. Somewhere, warmth was held patiently. And the world, having rested well, carried on, lighter, calmer, and ready. The cottage stood, the fire endured, and the quiet lived on, forever.